road on the road. I think I think we should just start because yeah, I've got a good routine now. I decided to just like talk about the introductions for the first few minutes, and then that's enough time for people to start filtering in. So welcome everyone. Um, this is part one of the two-part water cooling workshop. Um, yes, part one. Huh? I. Yeah. Sorry. Anyways, um, cool. So this, yeah, so the first, hopefully I've divided it well. The first part is um, just showing you all the basics and getting into doing your own custom loop, which is the step up from your all-in-one water cooling. And then the next workshop in 2 weeks is going to be, I'm going to be teaching you the final tips and tricks that should be enough to help you um, just make the best looking professional quality loops that you can. Um, like, and I mean like presentation, display quality. I'm clicking on the wrong thing, aren't I? Cool. Yes, if you don't know, I think you all know, we have a new exec team for 2022. Yeah, we have 3 new people elected in the team, so congratulations to all of them. This Friday is Squid Game Roblox night. I don't know how that works. Conrad is going to head the event. Apparently they're going to be like infiltrating some server or something, and it's going to be like Squid Game based. I think I saw like a gameplay on Pokemon's channel, like out of like just randomly, and yeah, it's basically a recreation of the series. Um, I've been informed that PC Building Simulator is free on Epic Games right now, so if you don't have it already, get it. It's a great game, and join our Facebook group if you haven't already. Yes, this is an advanced workshop, but yeah, please don't be discouraged. I hope that like people haven't been discouraged from joining this. Um, I, I, I highly stress that even if you're like a newbie, you will learn a lot from this. And yeah, Captain America Civil War is after. I've got to go to an exec meeting at 6 and I'll come back. Let's get started. So, what is the general principle of water cooling? We know that, well, water cooling sort of vaguely um, performs better than air cooling, but why? Um, in a pump, it's we in a water cooling loop, it contains water which is driven by a pump and it goes round and around and around in circles all day. What happens is that cold water passes through a water block, which is this thing that sits right on top of the CPU. And so, as you can imagine, the heat from the CPU gets transferred to the water and the CPU cools down. And the water becomes hot in turn and it goes to the radiator. The thing that is so special about water cooling is the radiator because it has a very high surface area. And yeah, you can't really see it here, but this is a radiator, and fans which sit on top of the radiator push air through the fins of the radiator. And because of the high surface area, the water cools very, very quickly. And after it cools, the water returns to the pump, and you repeat the whole process over and over again. So you might have seen, I think everyone has seen the all-in-one or closed loop water cooling setups. Um, it's good because it cools better than some of the best aftermarket air coolers. And for builds which have like a really cramped space around the CPU, the small water block is really, really advantageous, and it also minimizes that all that sagging stress on the motherboard with those really big and tall heat sinks. Um, Sometimes yeah, like back in the day we never had this, right? And I'm talking about like 4 years ago. Nowadays you have these cute screens on the water blocks. Like it's so cool. I think this is a Kraken X72. Um, and you can, uh, um, some of them are. Uh, is this one animated? Yeah. Yeah, if you go in the M-Wave, they have like a whole ton of computers with just AIOs, and some of them move, some of them don't. Um, I'm pretty sure this does because it's also used as a dynamic temperature and RPM display. Um, yeah, and sometimes you get all-in-one loops which are expandable. So this is the um, EK Predator, I think, all-in-one expandable series, and what it has is these special fittings called quick disconnects. So you push a button and the whole thing just decouples, and you can just click, and you like one click, and then you add another water block connected to some other pipes, and then another click you can disconnect that, and yeah. So um, expandable AIOs is sort of a middle ground between the closed loop and open loop cooling systems, which are also called custom loops. That will be the focus of the talk today. In a custom loop, it might sound really daunting because you must buy the water blocks, the pump, the radiators, whatever, everything yourself. But when you think about it, it's really good because you have much greater customization ability, and you can cool so much more than just a CPU. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more expensive because it's not mass produced like the AIOs. But like at the end of the day, if you want to cool your graphics card, which a lot of people want to, um, you can't beat a custom loop because with custom loops, your graphics card probably will not go above like 40, 50 degrees Celsius. If your room at like normal room temperature, like 25 degrees Celsius. So the cooling is just unparalleled. In fact, you can cool a whole lot more. You can cool your RAM, you can cool your motherboard, or slash chipset. You can cool hard drive, not hard drives. That shouldn't be there. It's not very common. They don't get really hot, but you can cool SSDs. SSDs, in particular M2. Um, some people might want to cool their power supply, but we all know what happens when you try to cool your power supply. um, I'm going to go through each component one by one, and for now, these are just the basics. In the part two, we'll I'll show you how how people use tips and tricks to put them all together. A water block, the water block is where the water runs through, and and as I mentioned before, um, this is the water side. On the other side, it's meant to stick flush onto the CPU. So and this acts as the interface of heat exchange between CPU and water. Um, so just a technical note, right? How water blocks usually have like these these ridges these are actually microchannels for the water to flow through, and it's it's accompanied by this metal thing called a jet plate. And what it does, so this is sort of a this is sort of a disassembly of the left hand side here. The water goes in through this hole here, and the water is forced and deliberately directed through this tiny slit in the jet plate. And so the water is forced to either go this way or this way through the microchannels. And this way, and in this fashion, it turns out that the heat dissipation is the most efficient, and with a higher surface area. And so the water becomes hot and it goes out the edges, and then as you can see here, and this is the outlet for the hot water. There are many different types of water block, as you could imagine, because you're calling all these different components in your computer. Obviously, what you've just seen is the CPU water block. There's also the GPU water block, and this comes in full cover, which means that it cools the RAM and other um, other um, other components. um, on the water block that might get hot, on the card that might get hot. Or you can have universal. Universal is like one size fits all. So um, usually you might not want to go universal because the RAM will get hot and it needs additional heat sinks that you have to manually put. The good thing about universal water blocks is that in for what I do, right, servers, usually there's no water blocks created for server GPUs. So if you use a universal, if you universal is a one size fits all, so it will always fit. And yeah, for the RAM, you just cool those by attaching heat sinks yourself. Um, a nice balance is hybrid. Um, hybrid hybrid ones are just a universal water block combined with a custom slab of metal which acts as a heatsink. So every time you want to upgrade your GPU, you just have to swap out the black heatsink and you keep the water block. Yeah, it's just there because it exists. I don't think it really has many advantages over full cover. It doesn't cool as well as full cover, and it's not really that practical. But well, um, it's for your education. Now you know it exists. For RAM, it's we actually I don't think we have. I don't think there are many um, water blocks that just directly deliver the water straight on top of the RAM. Um, it's mostly indirect. So the water flows through this channel and it's attached to a metal plate which conducts heat, and these are in turn attached to metal plates which sit right on top of the RAM. So it's like indirect. The water cools this part, which cools this part, which cools the RAM. Yeah. Um, People like Fish, if he's probably like the resident water cooling expert here. He'll tell you that RAM water blocks are not worth it, but sometimes they might be aesthetically pleasing, up to you. And then there are motherboard motherboard water blocks that cool the VRMs, voltage regulated modules. They might get hot sometimes if you're overclocking. Um, and for some motherboards, you might have heard of this, you can get a mono block which cools both the motherboard and the CPU at the same time. Um, I think nowadays really high-end motherboards actually come like straight out of the factory with like a full cover motherboard water block. Those are much more expensive. But yeah, like it's up to you, personal preference. Um, as always, when you're buying a water block, you always have to check whether there is a water block specially designed for your component. So if you have like, for example, a 2070, um, different brands of 2070 might have a different board design, right? So you need to make sure that your specific design, your specific model has a water block. We recommend these brands, um, but you can, well, if you're really, really up for it, and I don't, yeah, JC is not in this chat. Um, he'll tell you that you can make one yourself. You just need a CNC mill, a laser cutter, and you need to be able to cut, etch, and tap um, acetal or POM, um, or plexiglass, which is acrylic, but that's a bit that's a bit more complicated. Let's move on to the pump. So for the pump, there are really only two options that you can choose from. Everything else is shit. Trust me, I'm right on this one. There's a Liang D5 and then Liang DDC, and then yeah, don't choose anything else because they're not that good. Both of these pumps are pretty quiet, but there are just minute differences. Liang D5 is bigger, but it's quieter. It's really, really quiet. DDC has a greater head pressure, um, but it's a little louder, but it's smaller at the same time. Um, yeah, really, there's not really too much difference between them, unless if you're looking for higher head pressure, then you go with a DDC. They can be rebranded as well. Um, D5 is also called Alpha Core VPP655, and this is basically the DDC from EK. Um, Technically, pumps are defined by three main parameters. There's the head height, which is actually related to the maximum pressure. Um, head height is measured by just attaching a tube to the outlet of the pump and just holding the tube vertically and seeing how high it's able to pump the water. So I think the Liang D5 is able to pump like 3 meters of head pressure. That's very very high. That it means like for beginner water coolers, you buy a D5 and you immediately see that's very 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 strong, very very powerful. Um, Fluid mechanics time, yes. And you this is a graph of the flow rate as the pressure increases. The pressure should be on the x-axis. I don't know why, but anyways, um, as the pressure increases, as you can see, obviously the flow rate will decrease. If the pressure increases to a certain extent, then the pump isn't strong enough to push through the resistance, and the water will stop. And it turns out that this happens at, I don't know what these units are. This is an old graph at whatever units these are, but it's interesting to know the characteristic curve. You don't really need this. Just buy the pump and connect it to your water cooling loop. Done. Um, a practical note: if you actually end up building your loop, don't let your pump run dry, or just try not to have any air in your loop while the pump is running. Well, you'll have some air, but don't have more than 30% air, because you'll hear this really really nasty grinding sound, and you know your pump's dying. Don't let it run dry. Yes. Um, for radiators, so we talked about radiators a little bit. Um, there's just a few technical things that you need to know. Radiators have standardized size, just like fans. So a 240 mil radiator would be able to accommodate 120 mil fans, and a 480 mil radiator would accommodate 4, and so on. Try not to use aluminium radiators. Be aware of the material it's made of. Try to use copper or brass, or full copper even. These are the recommended brands from me. Yeah, you go with these and you don't have to worry about anything. As I mentioned, radiators have a high surface area, and that's related to the fin density. The higher the fin density, the more closely packed the fins are, and some radiators are thicker than others. If you have a high fin density, it means that there's more airflow restrictions, so your fans must run faster, hence louder, to push the air through. So in summary, um, if you have high surface area, then your fans need to be louder. But at the same time, um, like it, yeah, you have to balance that. So it's a compromise between heat dissipation versus airflow versus fan noise. And moving on to fans, fans for this is a must know. Fans are usually classified into two different categories: static pressure optimized or airflow optimized. So Corsair SP120 is a static pressure optimized line of fans, and AF120 is an airflow optimized line of fans. What that means is that the static pressure ones are able to push the air through more resistance, and these are the ones you should be using for radiators. For for airflow optimized fans, you should be using them just for the case fans, because um, you use them on a radiator, the air actually won't go through. And why the difference? It's usually related to the amount of wattage of the fans, as well as the spacing between the shroud and the fins of the fan, which you see here. So usually the static pressure optimized fans, I'm not sure if you can see clearly, the spacing is very very small, so the air can't really leak out. The air is just it must go through the radiator, but for airflow it might not. Um, High static pressure doesn't necessarily mean high airflow, so that's the difference between them. Static pressure optimized fans tend to be higher in noise level, because of the just because of the air rushing between the shroud and the fins. Um, some other criteria which you may or may not um, consider important is whether it has how heavy it is, how much power it can draw, or whether there's PWM. Actually, this is very important. PWM fans are very, very important because that's how you can control the speed of the fans using the motherboard. Um, Make sure your fans are PWM. Otherwise, you have to settle with a voltage control knob, which is not ideal. Um, and then obviously, yeah, if you want RGB, yeah, that's a given. You know when you know you need it if you need it. And finally, the tubing. Today I'm only going to really talk about soft tubing or flexi tubing, um, because as a beginner water cooler, you'll probably just be using these. You won't go straight into like the hardcore stuff. Um, Soft tubing is very simple. You just buy like a whole roll and you cut it with scissors and you use compression fittings, which is barb and clip. I'm not sure if I have those here, but um, these are compression fittings. So I'll talk more about this in the next workshop. Um, they will ensure that the tubes are held are screwed in properly into the water blocks. And as you can see, this is calling a graphics card and a CPU. It comes in these sort of inch-wise tube sizes, which are kind of disgusting, but you need to know this because you need to pick the right compression fittings for your tube sizes. And you need to be aware of the inner and outer diameter, which is ID and OD respectively. Um, the inner diameter determines sort of what size of the inner barb you'll use, and OD determines the width of the compression that has to screw onto it. Good thing about soft tubing is that it builds really fast. Um, it's cheap, and it's highly portable, and it's well, as with all water cooling setups, it's very sturdy. However, the water actually evaporates through the the plastic, believe it or not, over time, and the plastic in turn actually leaches plasticizers into the loop. Plasticizers are the substances that make the plastic flexible. That's not a good thing. If sometimes because it might clog up your loop. So an alternative is zero maintenance tubing, ZMT. They either made of nitrile or EPDM rubber, which is the same material as the O-rings. As you can see here, it's just black. Um, it it could look good in black builds, but like all black builds, right? But sometimes if you have a lot of water blocks and a lot of tubing, then it can look really, really ugly and messy with like black tubes going everywhere. So you may or may not want that. In this, I think it's okay. It looks pretty good here, especially with those silver fittings. Anyways, um, ZMT is what I'm using for my server right now. Um, I'm I'm trying to get my water loop up and running this week, hopefully. But yeah, I bought like 25 or 30 meters of ZMT tubing from Taobao, and yeah, they're going outside to my balcony where my radiator is. So I'll be giving updates in the hardware channel about the progress of that. So wish me luck. Um, ZMT is, um, as you might have already guessed, it's very, very reliable, and because it's so thick and due to just the nature of the material, water doesn't evaporate as much, so zero maintenance, that's what the name implies. It also tends to kink less, typo. Um, yeah, so with the clear tubing, if you bend it, if the bending angle is too great, then it will just kink and the water will stop flowing. That's really bad. But for ZMT, because it's thick and also due to the nature of the material, it just doesn't really kink as much. So So it's ideal for the mission critical application in the server. Cooling outside my server room. I don't have a server room, it's just my living room. Yeah. It is what it is. But yeah, I have, if you haven't seen it, I'll post a picture of it. It's, I have a Mora, which is a 420 by 420 radiator sitting in a cupboard on the balcony, and hopefully that will cool my 4 CPUs and my GPU and my RAID card. Hopefully. Oh, like because it's outside as well, like I I have the fans, I'll have the fans on like 100% the whole time. And yeah. Here's an interesting one. Yeah, I think we're getting to the end of today's workshop. Um, I saw this the other day. I found it pretty funny. Here's a water block with an HDMI connected screen, and RGB lights. I don't have the RGB here, but it's pretty funny. It's a $200 water block, and you get 1440 by 1440 resolution at 60 hertz in this tiny, tiny screen here. So next time at a LAN, if you see someone without a monitor and just looking into their PC case, then yeah, don't judge them. They might actually have this kind of water block. That's a full display. It actually will show windows and everything. It's so funny. Yeah, so next time, I think that's the end. Next time we'll do hard tubing and copper, chrome tubing. Um, and I'll teach you how to do it like the pros. It's a sort of expose of all the tricks and tips. Yeah, so thank you for coming. Um, please sign the ARC form. Yeah. Yeah. Because you're, yep. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. 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 Yeah, so like because this is like an introduction to custom loops, like this it's it's just in general it's good to just say, well, don't use aluminium because most of the good brands don't even sell aluminium radiators, right? And water blocks. So I don't want anyone to just go walk away and buy an aluminium water block just because I said it was fine in certain contexts, but they actually have like a water block that's copper. Yeah. But yeah, like if you know your shit, then yeah, definitely like do full aluminium by all means. Um, that will be totally fine. But yeah, don't ever mix metals in a loop. That means don't buy, try not to buy radiators off eBay or Taobao because a lot of the Chinese radiators are aluminium as well. Um, that being said, a lot of the water blocks are also aluminium. Good question. Um, yeah, so here's the water block. I don't know if, crap. No, don't send notifications. I can't zoom in. I don't know why. Oh, here we go, these big photos. Yeah. It's so funny. Well, the mouse goes on your motherboard. So, like normal. Yeah, this just acts as a screen, except it's on top of the water block. I think it's so economical because your screen is water cooled already, right? Dude, oh, we should buy it and try. Yeah, I don't know. Here's the. Just overclock my water block. Funny. I believe it's powered by the micro USB and the HDMI just delivers the data. Like, there's a freaking HDMI going into your water block. Like, what the heck? But it's bizarre. It's so bizarre. Like, Barrow has like a lot of like it's not bizarre, I think, per se. Like it's innovative, like really, really innovative. But like for what use case, I'm not quite sure. No. Yeah, I don't know what because like you wouldn't be able to see inside your server anyways, because none of them have glass doors. Might not be very easy to plug in the HDMI. Yeah, true. Like you have to like you have to get the cable back into the case. Uh, oh yes, yes, definitely, always thermal paste. Yep, because um, a water block is just a heat sink, but without the fins for air. Yep, yep. It really varies, and I can't give you a definitive answer. Just a guesstimate. Um, Depending on how well you've constructed it, it can be anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. I've actually gone 3.5 years without flushing my loop, and I could have gone longer, but the water started like because I use yellow coolant, the water started turning like brown, and like it's meant to be an opaque coolant, right? Um, it started becoming transparent, and that's when something's wrong. so So yeah, like most of the time you can see because there are color changes. Um, Chunky coolant. Um, yeah, but but yeah, like if you're if you're really organized and you have a lot of motivation, then you can do it every 6 months. But usually every 1 or 2 years should be fine. Um, Laguna Yellow EK. This is the one I got from. Yeah, this is the kind of coolant that I had in my old computer, which my partner is using right now. No, you can't. It says harmful on the bottle. See? Yeah, there's just the coolant contains, well, at least the one from EK anyway, it contains a anti-corrosion um component. Um yeah, it was in the PC sock Kahoot. It's some kind of a yeah, I forgot what the component was, but you can find it here. Contains anti-corrosion, and here we go, found it. Uh, Corrosion and scale inhibitors, good transfer characteristics, color pigments that don't leave residue, high specific heat, blah blah blah. Um, I don't know where it says, but it also prevents, um, yeah, biocides. That's the word. Um, that prevent fungus and bacteria from growing in your loop. Um, an alternative to this would be like a silver kill coil. Yeah, so you dump this in your reservoir, and it should kill everything because the silver gradually dissolves into the water and it forms silver nanoparticles, which have one of the highest sort of antibacterial and antifungal properties known of any substance. One of the highest. Yeah. Or you can use blah 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 blah. What's a good biocide? Um, I forgot the name. Uh, Copper. Yeah, copper salt is good. It doesn't kill as fast as silver, but but yeah, like if it's ideal if in your water cooling loop because you're using copper metals as well, so it won't precipitate onto the metals. Um, EK Cryofuel is pretty good. See, everyone says EK Cryofuel. Um, Coolants. Do not use ethylene glycol if anyone could drink it. Yes, ethylene glycol is what they use in all-in-one loops. That's why you can't open it because it's very, very hard. It's toxic. Propylene glycol, on the other hand, is not. For those of you who do chemistry, ethylene glycol is just, yeah, just COH, COH. Yeah, this thing. Yep. That's. I actually left that to the next week. It's by the fittings. I really should have gone through this, but since we have time, yes, let's go through this. How do I connect tubes through water blocks? Um, yeah, I ended up going really fast, didn't I? That's good. Um, yeah, so on your water blocks, the the threads are actually standardized, so you actually don't have to worry about this yourself. Um, all the all water cooling components have what's called a G1/4 thread, which is I think it's like a 1/4 inch in diameter or something, and um, yeah, it's in the British standard parallel pipe, and you know a diameter of 1/4 has a corresponding sort of thread pitch. Yeah, that's the word. There's another alternative which is 1/4 NPSM, but you never see this. In 2021, I think this is completely phased out. Um, don't get the G1/4, which is the thread size, and the tube sizes, which is the ID and OD of your flexi tube. Don't get them mixed up. Um, the These holes are what the fittings will screw into, and they'll act as adapters to your fittings. So this is a barb and clip, which yeah, do not use this. This is like out of date, but this for educational purposes. In the olden days, before water cooling started becoming like more and more mainstream, people used to cool their Pentium 4s with this kind of setup. Nowadays, you buy this like in bulk. What this is just a barb and a screw that acts as the clip, but it just screws in, and it will stay screwed in. But yeah, a barb and clip might slip off if the pressure is too high. It's rare though, but it's ugly and it's not that reliable. um, yeah, and then there's hard tube fittings, which are yet again different. Hard tube fittings, as you can imagine, you can't squeeze them right. Like compression fittings squeeze the soft tubing, and they squeeze it down on the barb to ensure that no water can leak out. But you can't do that right with the hard tube because it's hard. So what you do is you just literally try to maintain a tight seal between the um, quote unquote compression and the the tube. So as you can see, there are three O-rings. I think two or three O-rings in the main unit of the fitting for the hard tube. you put in the hard tube and then you screw in the compression. And what the compression does is that it doesn't instead of compressing the hard tube, it compresses the O-ring. It makes it expand around the hard tube, and so it locks in, and makes a tight seal, if that makes sense. It's easier to explain in person, unfortunately. Um, yeah. As Quarky says, the barb keeps the water in. Okay, so this was soft tube. The barb keeps the water in. The screw keeps the tube from on the barb when pulled. Yep. Such as when you have pressure in the loop. Yep. Then you have like these pneumatic fittings which are kind of weirder, right? And they just bite down on your fittings. They're not common, but you see these in like plumbing and high air pressure. Yeah. Got to pass around fittings in an in-person workshop. I would really love that. Next year, guarantee. Yeah. Yeah, there are a whole variety of fittings you can do, like extenders and rotary fittings and these snake fittings, quick disconnects. You can buy them yourself, and temperature sensors, stop fittings, filters, and a flow indicator. It spins, and when it's not spinning, when it's supposed to be spinning, then you know that the pump's failed. So it's really great. Yeah. Yeah, so for fittings, like they're really expensive, right? So I just recommend that for the simple fittings, which don't require any sort of like mechanical wear and tear, like quick disconnects, like you could just buy them from China. So just these really simple 90-degree fittings or normal fittings, compression fittings, hard tube fittings. I've always bought them from China. At like a fraction of the price that you buy them here. Otherwise, your fittings will just cost you like $500 to $1,000. With Chinese fittings, you can just get away with like $100, $200, maybe $300. Yeah. Get it from Taobao. We have a Taobao slide in the next workshop. You need to use distilled water always. Um, yeah. If you just want distilled water and nothing else, then put a silver kill coil in to stop stuff from growing in your loop. Otherwise, yeah, you're good to go. Yeah, the thing I was thinking about was PT Nuke. PT Nuke is a biocide, and as the name suggests, it kills everything. So you add like a few drops of this in your thing, and yes, as Thingo mentioned, it contains copper 2, so that's sulfate, copper 2 sulfate. Yeah, it's blue, um, and this will kill anything it touches, basically. This is 2 years on distilled with PT Nuke, no maintenance. Yeah, so there's some residue. There'll always be some residue on your water block. It's inevitable over the course of water cooling. You just use vinegar to flush out your loop every like 6 years. I mean, wool. Every 3 years, 2 years, 2 years, 1 year. Um, Here it's Fish's setup. I'm actually gonna post it on Facebook. He's calling his graphics card and CPU, and he's got gosh, what was this called again? Flow plate, I think. Distro plate. Yes, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, this is a distro plate, which is sort of a thing nowadays where it combines the reservoir in with the pump top. So this is a pump, this round thing here, and yeah, it's supposed to be more sleek, and it is really really thin. If you see this here, Um, great stuff. Really, really good looking. Yeah, they do sometimes, but yeah, a lot of the time, most of the time you have to just unscrew the heatsink and put the new water block that you bought from EK water water blocks onto it. And yeah, it's just a few screws. It's pretty easy. Just be careful when you unscrew. Don't scratch anything on the graphics card. That goes without saying. I think EVGA. What's it called? Like the EGVA water cooled 3090 or something. So oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, EVGA and Gigabyte have these sort of they come from the factory with water blocks already, as you can see. So you buy the graphics card and that's it. Um, if you don't have a custom water loop, then don't buy this because this won't work. Gigabyte Water Force. I think Gigabyte Water Force. Well, I can say this because we aren't sponsored by them again yet. Um, kind of a rip. Also, it does come with a custom water block. They used to have like this whole, AIO system. I think it wasn't popular enough, so they canned it. Yeah, they all do now. Yeah, Gigabyte comes with this. It's a pretty good looking water block to be honest. Corsair water cool something. Um oh, there's the Corsair AIO GPU bracket. Yeah, so you can actually I'm not sure if this is still a thing nowadays, but oh, okay. Is it a recent GPU or okay? So it still fits. Nice. Yeah. So this basically enables the use of an AIO with on a GPU, which is sort of um if oh yeah, true. I think this was for like the R9 290 or 390. Right. Yeah, this is all the stuff. This is all the stuff that I used to look up when I was building my old build. So my brain has not updated yet. Um, Corsair Hydro. Oh yeah, this is the one you're talking. Oh no, no, it's not. It's not. Oh yeah, and then there's and then there's a GPU anti-sag bracket, as you can see here. Or you can like use a riser. Risers are best. Yeah, cause what used to happen was like the GTX 970, especially the ASUS Strix, was the GPU would sag over time due to the weight, and that would just break the card. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, legit. Next minute they'll next minute they'll add drawers to your to the heatsink to put your stuff in. I bet someone will come up with that idea. Oh, that is so good. So good, right? The good old days. Does anyone think this Seahawk looks good? I think it's pretty okay until you get a lot of too many pipes. This pipe doesn't really look attractive though, I think. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fan because this only yeah, but you won't have to have it very high because you're just cooling the RAM. The water block is sort of offloaded the cooling of the actual chip, which is where most of the heat is. Yeah, with yeah, yeah. With water blocks, the really good thing is that you don't have to go 3.5 slots. You can just go single slot. As in, this is a 2080 Ti and a single slot. Look how cool. So yeah, like this is one of the things that water cooling can do. Only water cooling can do. I think that being said, nowadays even if you buy like um um professional cards, right? Um, some of the Chinese manufacturers actually make um, water blocks for those professional cards. Like this, okay, Google's recommending me the RTX 4000, which is a Quadro, right? I'm pretty sure Bixby, which is a Chinese brand, has a water block for that. AK does. Yeah. RTX. What about RTX 8K, which is like top of the line for that generation? RTX 8K is like the 2080 Ti of of that generation. Nowadays we have the A6K. What's this? Oh yeah, the uh, walnut. Yeah. It would this kind of stuff wouldn't fly in a server because you don't want to file. But yeah, this is the underside. Big brain, biggest brain in the chat. I love how the fittings are also wooden, but I imagine that like if it's like unless if it's made really really well, the wood might fall off from the metal if you screw it too hard. Yeah. It's much more than that. Wow. Wow. Yeah. And you can't buy the 280 Ti anymore. You used to have like the gigabyte water force. What was that? Like, oh, external or extreme or was it the extreme? This was back in the day when. Oh, no, not that one. Gigabyte water force. Ex Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, this thing. It's so old that they were still using SLI. Powered by GTX 980. Yeah. NV Link is like. Oh yeah, this like. Yeah. So you used to be able to buy three 980s, I think, or the water box, I don't know, with this sort of rad that sits on top of your case. Yeah, like quad 980 Ti's. Yeah. This is the stuff I remember back in the day. And it was like the yeah. It is pretty okay. But like nowadays like the ampere generation's like so much more powerful. Like this is my favorite card, right? Everyone knows this. Um, it's 1000. A 2000. It's like half. It's like a half height. Yeah, Scott Tech. It's a half height card. Um, and it looked 2070. It is really good, which is why I'm actually like unironically recommending it sometimes. It's like dual slot, but it's half height, so you can fit it into those um my favorite my favorite. um, I imagine they'd start making it as soon as it's released, but it's not released yet. This would be really great if you just have like a single slot water cooled version that would fit in like. It's enough. Well, it's dual slot, so the surface area of the fans is really high, of the heatsink is really high. Um, cause like usually like this is the newest. This is actually the latest and best half height, half single slot card. Um, yeah, but it's actually enough. It's actually enough. By all means, water cool it, right? But yeah, like fits in every build. It's equivalent to a GTX 1650, and it's really good. And it costs. Yeah, it is really good for most things. I've got a P1000, which is the last gen equivalent of this. Um, it it runs pretty